Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really try to cut through all the noise, sift through the sources out there, and hopefully unearth those crucial insights you need to be genuinely well-informed. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating and, often contentious area. It's this nexus where political campaign finance, the rapidly evolving world of cannabis legalization and federal enforcement all collide, sometimes spectacularly. And this isn't just abstract legal stuff, right? It's about real-world impacts, surprising intersections that, well, they affect all of us. For this deep dive, we've pulled from a whole stack of sources, everything from detailed policy FAQs, breaking news reports, even some public online discussions. Our mission is to untangle these complex issues for you, our listener, and give you that shortcut to, well, a deeper understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And our goal, I think, is pretty clear. We want to illuminate precisely how money, these legal structures, and let's face it, raw power dynamics intersect, especially, where state and federal laws are just completely at odds. What's really fascinating here is that core tension running through it all. How do we protect fundamental free speech rights, but at the same time guard against undue influence, maybe even corruption, in our political system? It's a tough balance.
Yeah, a really tough balance. And as we're about to see, these threads, they don't just exist in theory. They came crashing together in a dramatic, very recent event that perfectly illustrates this friction. The federal raids on a state legal cannabis farm right here in California. Okay, let's unpack this. So to really grasp what's at stake, let's first lay some groundwork. Let's talk about how political campaigns are actually funded. You hear terms like hard money and soft money thrown around a lot. For those of you who follow campaign finance, you know these are foundational. But for anyone maybe needing a quick refresh, here's the essential distinction, because it's pretty important.
Right. Think of hard money as basically writing a check directly to a candidate's campaign, or maybe to a political party committee, or a traditional PAC. It's tracked, it's regulated by the federal government, and there are strict limits on how much any one person can give. The key thing here is that this is the money Congress has traditionally tried to control to prevent, direct quid pro quo corruption, a direct link.
Okay, so that's hard money. Limited, regulated. What about soft money?
Soft money, well, that's a bit different. It's more like donating to a political party for general activities like party building, like voter registration drives, or maybe producing a general ad promoting the party's platform, not necessarily a specific candidate. Historically, this non-federal money was much less regulated. It created this space where much larger sums, sometimes unlimited sums, could flow into the political system, often without that same level of federal oversight. And that, understandably, raises concerns for people worried about big money's influence.
Okay, so beyond just hard and soft money, there's this whole ecosystem of political organizations raising and spending money, right? You mentioned PACs.
Yeah, political action committees, PACs. These are often set up by corporations, labor unions, or maybe trade associations. They spend money on elections. They can donate to parties or candidates. But crucially, they're not supposed to be directly controlled by the candidates they support. Then you have different types, like separate segregated funds, SSFs, which are PACs tied to a specific company or union. They can only get money from people connected to that organization.
And non-connected PACs.
Right. Those are financially independent. They can ask the general public for funds. But then you get to the super PACs. Officially, they're called independent expenditures only committees.
And these are the game changers.
Right. Absolutely. What's really fascinating and frankly powerful about super PACs is this. While traditional PACs have contribution limits, super PACs can accept unlimited contributions from individuals, from corporations, from unions. Unlimited. The catch, legally speaking, is that they have to operate independently. That means they can spend all this money advocating for or against federal candidates, but they can't directly coordinate with the candidate's campaign.
So, wait. I can't give, say, $1 million directly to candidate X.
Correct. Big limits on that.
But I can give $1 million to a super PAC that then spends it all supporting candidate X or attacking their opponent.
Precisely. As long as there's no coordination. You can see how this fundamentally reshapes who can influence political outcomes. It creates what, many people see as a kind of two-tiered system of influence.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. And it gets even murkier when we talk about tax-exempt groups, doesn't it? Like 527s and 501c(s).
It does.
Yeah.
527 organizations. They're primarily focused on issue advocacy or maybe voter turnout. They can't explicitly say vote for candidate X, but they don't have fundraising limits. They do, however, have to disclose their donors to the IRS.
Okay, some disclosure there. But the 501c(s), that's where the term dark money often comes up, right?
Exactly. Specifically, you have 501c groups. Those are your standard charities, churches, educational foundations. They are strictly prohibited from engaging in political campaigns, though they can do some voter education.
Yep.
But then there are the 501c4 groups. These are designated as social welfare organizations.
Yeah.
They can engage in some political activities as long as it aligns with their mission and doesn't explicitly favor specific candidates as their primary purpose.
And the crucial part,
and this is really the heart of the controversy, is that these 501c4 groups are not required to disclose their donors publicly. This creates what critics call a dark money channel. It allows potentially powerful interests, corporations, wealthy individuals, unions, to influence elections anonymously. People argue this lack of transparency serves special interests, maybe contributes to corruption, because you can't see who's really behind certain messages or campaigns.
but there's another side to that argument too, isn't there?
There is. Proponents argue that forcing public disclosure could actually harm free expression. They say donors might be discouraged from participating or donating if they fear harassment or reprisals from those who disagree with them. So it's this fundamental clash: transparency versus privacy and free association.
Okay, so let's talk actual numbers. What are the limits for individuals giving hard money right now, say for the 2024 elections?
Right. For 2024 federal elections, an individual can give a maximum of $3,300 per candidate per election. So that's $3,300 for the primary and another $3,300 for the general.
All right.
They can give $5,000 per year to a traditional posse and $36,500 per year to a national party committee.
But
Crucially, as we discussed, those limits do not apply to super PACs or these 501c groups. Individuals, corporations, unions can contribute unlimited amounts to them.
unlimited, wow. And disclosure. Generally, donations over $200 have to be disclosed, right? Name, address, employer.
That's generally true for contributions to candidates, parties, and traditional PACs. That information becomes publicly accessible. But again, the big exception is the 501c3 and especially the 501c4 organizations. No public disclosure of donors there.
It feels like the Supreme Court must have weighed in heavily on all this.
Oh, profoundly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, these regulations, or sometimes the lack thereof, have been shaped massively by landmark Supreme Court cases. Let's look at Buckley v. Vallejo back in 1976. This ruling essentially said that limits on campaign spending violated the First Amendment's free speech rights. Spending money equals speech, basically. However, the court did uphold limits on contributions, the hard money limits we just talked about. They argued those were necessary to prevent actual or apparent corruption. They famously stated, and this is a key line, that the concept that government may restrict the speech of some elements of our society in order to enhance the relative voice of others is wholly foreign to the First Amendment.
So, spending money in politics is basically protected speech. That's a powerful concept. How did that idea evolve later, especially with Citizens United? That case seems to come up constantly.
It evolved dramatically. Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission in 2010 was absolutely pivotal. The court decided that restrictions on independent political broadcasts funded by corporations and unions were unconstitutional under the First Amendment.
Independent broadcasts meaning ads not directly run by the campaign.
Exactly. The court argued that these independent expenditures don't, in themselves, lead to quid pro quo corruption. This decision effectively opened the floodgates for unlimited independent spending by corporations and unions, significantly boosting their potential influence in elections.
And then there was McCutcheon.
Right, McCutcheon v. FEC in 2014. That case struck down the aggregate, limits the total cap on how much one individual could give to all federal candidates, parties, and PACs combined over a 2-year cycle. The court essentially doubled down, reaffirming that only direct quid pro quo corruption, like an outright bribe, a clear exchange of money for an official act, can be constitutionally regulated. Broader concerns about general influence or access. Not enough, according to the court majority.
Wow, so this really highlights that fundamental tension we talked about, doesn't it? How do you possibly balance protecting free speech, which includes spending money in this context, with the need to prevent undue influence or, outright corruption in our democracy?
It's the central question, and it's one the public clearly grapples with. You mentioned the 2023 Pew study finding that 72% of Americans believe campaign spending should be limited, and most feel that major political donors just have way too much influence compared to average citizens.
Yeah, it feels like there's a real disconnect between the legal framework shaped by the courts and what a lot of the public feels is right or fair, almost like people see the system as rigs for the powerful. Okay, let's pivot now to another incredibly complex legal tangle, cannabis legalization in the U.S. You might think, okay, it's legal in my state, end of story. But it's really not that simple, is it? State laws are often crashing right into federal prohibitions.
Not simple at all. It creates this constant state of tension, a real tightrope walk for businesses in the industry. Federally, believe it or not, cannabis is still classified as a Schedule I drug under the Controlled Substances Act.
Schedule 1, alongside drugs like heroin.
Exactly. That classification implies it has a high potential for abuse and, critically, no accepted medical use. So technically, federal law prohibits its use for any purpose.
But that doesn't seem to match reality in dozens of states.
It doesn't. And that's the paradox. In practice, federal law is generally not enforced against cannabis activities that are legal under state law. But the federal prohibition still exists, creating this precarious legal limbo.
Is that likely to change? I hear talk about rescheduling.
There is movement. The Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, has initiated a review to potentially move cannabis to Schedule III. That's a less restrictive category, acknowledging some medical use and lower potential for abuse. If that happens, it could significantly alter the entire landscape, especially around things like research and banking. But for now, it's still Schedule I.
Okay, so federally, it's basically illegal, but often ignored if it's state legal. What does the state level look like?
It's a patchwork, right?
The complete patchwork. You've got medical cannabis legal with a doctor's recommendation in 40 states now, plus 4 U.S. territories and Washington, D.C.
40 states. Wow. Yeah. And there's even a specific protection, the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, first passed back in 2014. It prohibits the Department of Justice from spending funds to prosecute individuals who are complying with their state's medical cannabis laws.
So there's some shield for medical users and providers. What about recreational?
Recreational use is now legalized in 24 states, 3 U.S. territories, and also Washington, D.C. In most of those places, commercial sales are allowed too, though not everywhere. Virginia and D.C. have some quirks there. And beyond full legalization, another 7 states have decriminalized cannabis, meaning small amounts might get you a fine, but not criminal charges.
So you literally have these huge multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar businesses licensed by the state, paying taxes, employing thousands, all operating in an industry that, according to the federal government, is fundamentally illegal. So even with medical being legal in 40 states and that amendment, the feds could still technically raid a state legal farm.
Technically, yes, especially if they believe other federal laws are being broken, like immigration law or financial regulations, or, as we'll see, potentially labor laws. It creates this surprising fragility for what's become a massive industry.
And that fragility, that tension, brings us right back to that case study you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It vividly illustrates what happens when these abstract legal conflicts hit the ground in the real world.
Okay, here's where it really gets intense. Let's talk about that recent flashpoint. The federal raids in July 2025 on Glass House Farms. This was a big state-licensed cannabis facility in California.
Yeah, the events surrounding Glass House Farms are just a stark, almost textbook illustration of this federal-state conflict with politics layered right on top. You had federal immigration authorities, ICE and CBP, backed up by National Guard troops, conducting raids at Glass House facilities in Carpinteria and Camarillo, California.
National Guard? That sounds serious. What was the official reason given?
Well, the Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, Rodney Scott, actually tweeted about it, saying the farm was now under investigation for child labor violations. And the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, reported rescuing 9 unaccompanied children in the U.S. illegally. Later, a DHS Assistant Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin, stated that federal agents rescued at least 10 migrant children from suspected forced labor and trafficking, and they also arrested about 200 undocumented individuals during the operation.
Child labor and trafficking. Those are incredibly serious allegations. What did Glass House say?
Glass House Brands put out a statement saying they complied with the federal warrants issued, but firmly denied that they knowingly violated any hiring practices or employed minors. They basically said they followed the rules.
And this wasn't just a quiet raid, you said? There were protests?
Oh, yeah. The raids apparently sparked widespread protests. Sources describe an intense standoff between these heavily armed federal officers and dozens of protesters. It got ugly. Federal personnel reportedly used tear gas and smoke bombs against the crowds.
Tear gas against protesters at a legal business.
That's what the reports say. And things got even more serious. The FBI is now offering a $50,000 reward for information about someone who apparently fired a pistol at federal law enforcement during the chaos.
Good grief. And were people hurt?
Tragically, yes. The United Farm Workers Union reported that several farm workers were critically injured during the events, and really sadly, one worker has died after he was chased by federal agents. It's just a terrible outcome.
That's awful. Now, you mentioned politics being layered on top. How did that play out?
Well, it connects back to campaign finance. Graham Farrar, who is a co-founder and the president of Glasshouse Farms, turns out he's made quite a few political donations over the years, primarily to California Democrats.
Like who?
Records show $10,000 to Governor Gavin Newsom back in 2018, and also donations to Representative Salud Carbajal, whose district includes one of the raided facilities, and Assemblymember Greg Hart.
Okay, so a donor to prominent Democrats gets raided by the federal government under a Republican administration. How did Newsom react?
Strongly. Governor Newsom's office came out swinging, condemning the federal actions. They accused the Trump administration of using inhumane immigration actions that deliberately cause chaos, fear, and terror. They also tried to pivot, pointing to alleged child labor issues and other contexts they said the administration ignores. Newsom himself tweeted something pretty fiery. California prosecutes child exploiters and traffickers. Trump tear gasses children, rips them from their parents, and deports farm workers. Priorities. Pretty direct.
Very direct. How did the other side respond to the donation connection?
It got interesting. Newsom's senior political advisor, Lindsay Cobia, when asked about Farrar's donations, tried to deflect by pointing out that the CEO of Glasshouse Brands, a guy named Kyle Kazan, is actually a Trump supporter, who, according to a Los Angeles Times report she cited, has given more money to Republicans than Democrats.
Still trying to muddy the waters politically.
Seems like it. However, a Fox News review looked into Kazan's donations and reported finding none to Trump's actual presidential campaigns, though they did note donations he made to various Democrats and some business contributions to Act Blue California, which supports Democrats.
So a bit of a political he said, she said on the donation front.
Exactly. But the whole episode really shows how political affiliations might make certain businesses targets for federal action, especially when state and federal laws clash, and then how those actions are immediately spun and characterized by opposing political figures, using pretty sharp rhetoric. It becomes less about the facts on the ground and more about scoring political points.
And it's worth remembering, this isn't the only instance of trouble or alleged corruption touching the cannabis industry we found in the sources. There was that other case involving Adam Hill.
Right. The former San Luis Obispo County Supervisor, Adam Hill. He apparently accepted about $32,000 in bribes from a cannabis entrepreneur named Helios Bobby Dayspring. The goal was to influence county cannabis regulations in Dayspring's favor.
What happened to them?
Dayspring eventually pleaded guilty to tax evasion and bribing Hill. He served a 22-month prison sentence. Adam Hill, tragically, died by suicide while the FBI investigation was ongoing. It's another example of the high stakes and potential for corruption when big money and evolving regulations mix.
Okay, so we have this flood of money influencing politics through donations, shaping industries like cannabis, sometimes leading to conflict and tragedy. But a lot of that money, whether from campaigns or just regular businesses, ends up being spent trying to influence us, the public, through advertising. And that brings us to something broader, a feeling maybe many of us share. Just being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of ads and messages trying to grab our attention every single day. It relates back to that feeling about campaign influence, doesn't it?
I think it absolutely does. Our sources included some online discussions where people expressed feeling genuinely exhausted by the sheer onslaught of repetitive commercials. And it's not just TV ads anymore.
No way, it's everywhere.
It's spam emails flooding your inbox, billboards plastered everywhere you look. Online ads that, as one person put it, blast you in the face with 2 autoplayers and scrolling ads. You even get ads playing at the gas pump or in the dentist's office waiting room now.
Yeah, it feels inescapable sometimes. Mental pollution, someone called it.
That phrase came up, mental pollution. People described it as incredibly intrusive, taking up valuable mental energy that you could be putting towards something else. There's even this undercurrent of anxiety about how much worse it might get with new tech, like ads inside virtual reality experiences.
It's no wonder people are actively trying to block it out. I mean, the sources mention heavy reliance on ad blockers like uBlock Origin, AdGuard, or using browsers like Brave that block ads automatically.
Definitely. People mentioned avoiding broadcast TV altogether, switching to ad-free streaming, listening to ad-free podcasts or audiobooks. Some even admitted to pirating content specifically to avoid the constant commercial breaks. It shows a real level of frustration.
Why is it so relentless, though? Is there a reason it feels like it's constantly escalating?
Well, one interesting way to think about it, mentioned in the sources, is through the lens of the prisoner's dilemma. Think about it. The best scenario for everyone, maybe even including the advertisers in a weird way, would be if nobody advertised.
Right.
No one gains a competitive advantage, and companies save a ton of money.
Okay, yeah. An ad-free utopia.
Right. But the dilemma is, the moment one company starts advertising, what do its competitors have to do?
They have to advertise too, just to keep up.
Exactly. They have to follow suit to maintain competitiveness.
Right.
So you get locked into this relentless cycle. It's like everyone is running faster and faster just to stay in place, always chasing growth and profit, which leads to ever more aggressive marketing tactics, including in the political sphere.
And if we loop this all back to our core discussion, this widespread public exhaustion and dissatisfaction with pervasive commercial influence, this feeling of being constantly bombarded, it really mirrors that widespread public belief we talked about earlier, that campaign spending needs limits and that big money donors have far too much influence.
It does seem like there's a parallel, doesn't it? A general sense that powerful forces, whether commercial or political, are overwhelming the individual's space and attention, maybe drowning out other vices.
So after navigating all this, the intricacies of campaign finance, the legal maze of cannabis, the drama of federal enforcement clashing with state law, and even this broader feeling of ad fatigue, what does it all mean for us trying to make sense of it?
Well, today we've certainly seen the complex, deeply interconnected nature of it all. Campaign finance rules, or lack thereof, shaping who has influence. The strange legal tightrope of cannabis legalization. And how federal power can be used, sometimes controversially, especially when state and federal laws diverge so sharply, as the Glass House Farms incident showed so dramatically. We've seen that constant, maybe unavoidable tension between protecting free speech, including political spending as speech, and the vital need to prevent corruption, or at least the appearance of undue influence. And it leaves us with those persistent, maybe unanswerable questions that sit right at the heart of all this historic legislation and those pivotal court cases. What are the truly appropriate limits on donations to candidates and traditional PACs? Should those limits even apply to super PACs, given how they operate? Can unlimited independent spending truly be separated from influence?
Yeah.
And maybe the biggest one, what level of disclosure of who is funding our political discourse is really appropriate? How do you balance that need for transparency with protecting free association and expression? There are no easy answers.
No easy answers at all.
But understanding these deeply intertwined themes, money, power, the law, and the flow of information, it's just crucial, isn't it? For informed civic participation, for figuring out what policies make sense in a world that feels like it's drowning in data, diverse influences, and constant messaging. Maybe the final question is for you, the listener. How do you choose to engage? How do you make your voice heard? And how do you find clarity amidst all the noise?